Adapting characters who are neither particularly famous, powerful, nor visually impressive is certainly a risky move. However, that's exactly the risk Marvel needs right now to prove they're still capable of telling a compelling story without relying on comic book recognition and pre-existing fan love. At the same time, a work that delves deep into psychology and explores darkness is an angle the studio should have exploited earlier, as their loyal audiences are no longer young children. Therefore, while this film about a ragtag group of anti-heroes might initially appear to be just a stepping stone for the Fantastic Four, it's actually a gamble that Chairman Kevin Feige certainly doesn't want to ruin. So, how did Thunderbolts make itself interesting, with only martial artists and gun dealers, after a Captain America 4 that tried to convey political messages but was too naive? Will Cinemata's assessment go the way of the trash, or does it reach something profound? Find answers in today's video. Note that I'll try not to reveal plot details, but if you want the most complete experience, watch the film before coming back. The film follows 6 supporting characters who have appeared in previous MCU works: Yelena Belova, Bucky Barnes, John Walker, Red Guardian, Ghost, and Taskmaster, all sharing the common trait of going through boring days. The film quickly takes us to a coincidental event where the team discovers they're actually undercover agents of Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, the CIA director who wants to eliminate outlawed warriors who are being pursued by the government. Notably, Fontaine is also running a secret project called Sentry, with the ambition of creating a superhuman with superior powers. Thus, from a journey of self-preservation against this scheming female politician, the Thunderbolts team gets pulled into a battle to save New York City against an opponent they have almost no chance of defeating. Beginning with Yelena's confession, Natasha Romanoff's sister, that she feels the future ahead is completely meaningless, the film prepares viewers very early that the next 2 hours will delve deep into the inner lives of characters with dark pasts. Especially with the villain Sentry from the trailer possessing the power to trap victims in a dark zone, a direct reference to psychological trauma and depression. Perhaps it's not difficult to determine that Thunderbolt's success depends entirely on whether the battle inside the anti-heroes' minds is engaging enough for the audience. While this sounds like a difficult challenge, Marvel actually has many reference materials at hand. First, they have their old friend James Gunn, who to date has contributed a total of 5 quality works about teams with more flaws than talents to both superhero universes. Moreover, the film's director Jake Schreier is also in extremely good form, and after the acclaimed Project Beef, he surely has considerable experience exploring hot-tempered characters who easily lose control. Taking full advantage of being a latecomer, Thunderbolts opens quite similarly to the Suicide Squad, also a group of anti-heroes manipulated by a high-ranking character of a secret organization, with a surprise right at the beginning of the film. Everything flows smoothly. And when the team finally confronts the villain, I personally found the film still engaging and intriguing. The plot only begins to polarize when each member demands their own development journey. Unfortunately, from the second act onward, the unavoidable problem emerges. Not every character in Thunderbolts is equally interesting. Let's talk about the names that did well. Favored with plenty of screen time and playing the role of Thunderbolts' leader, Yelena Belova is definitely the film's brightest spot and most memorable character, portrayed as a relaxed girl at the beginning who only carries out missions to kill time. Yelena transforms completely from her bland version in Black Widow, 2021, as her personality is meticulously developed by the writers. Not simply revisiting the haunting past of her Red Room training days, Yelena now worries whether she should follow Natasha's footsteps into the light, care about others, and fight for a specific goal. This not only aligns with her need to integrate with a group that excels at working individually, but also shows how much Natasha actually influenced her sister. It reminds us that she always kept family in her heart, and I really like how the film conveys this without needing too much dialogue. Yelena opening up to others also serves as a good springboard to develop the villain Sentry, and the relationship between these two characters is intriguing right from their first scene. Personally, I wasn't too drawn in by the backstory of Bucky because it was somewhat predictable, but his character still impresses with charming and very human dialogues with Yelena. And fortunately, the film uses the connection between these two outcasts as fuel for the climax in the final act. I don't know about you, but I've firmly shipped this couple. In conclusion, I think Yelena is a good example for subsequent MCU films to learn from. She doesn't need to immediately become noble or speak philosophical lines. We see her purpose for change stemming from simple, everyday reasons. By the end, although she takes on a bigger role, Yelena doesn't need to abandon her characteristic attitude, nor make grand declarations about major issues. Something that, as we've seen, is a double-edged sword that has prevented Sam Wilson's Captain America from gaining substantial weight. I especially liked how Yelena's past is revisited in the film. Instead of just describing the suffering of being trained in the Red Room, director Jake Schreier chose a rather fresh perspective. Yelena was always the best in class, and she felt sad when her classmates were beaten for not keeping up with her. I think it's these small details that make for unique interest, separating Yelena from Natasha, who already has a very solid position in fans' hearts. And come to think of it, hasn't a new perspective made Loki or Moon Knight completely different from the rest of the MCU? If I had to point out something unsatisfying, occasionally we still encounter somewhat forced psychological therapy-style dialogues advising people to love themselves. Fortunately, thanks to the talent of actress Florence Pugh, who after Dune and Oppenheimer no longer needs to prove her skills, these scenes don't become worse. Benefiting from Yelena's appeal is her foster father, Red Guardian. To be honest, although this character is still as rudimentary as when he appeared in 2021, at least his fame-seeking nature is a unique point. Like other teams, Thunderbolts needs a comedian, and an old-school super soldier father who dreams of becoming famous again is quite funny. Red Guardian's comedy level increases over time, and even if you don't laugh out loud, you're forced to sympathize with this anti-hero, because actor David Harbour has truly embodied the role with such charm. Looking back, having a father and daughter on the same team is also a unique feature of Thunderbolts, and we have reason to expect many new things from Red Guardian in future works. John Walker is a fairly predictable case, because in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series, he already had a somewhat complete development journey. Therefore, this knockoff Captain America now plays a supporting role, maintaining his characteristic arrogance to add color for moments of humor. At the same time, the flashback scenes are well done, reminding us that this is a man with a wife and young child behind him. This both explains his unlikable personality and sharp tongue, while showing us the difficult situation this character is caught in. A situation that, even with superpowers, he can't solve. In the same role as John Walker, Bucky Barnes in this reappearance also mainly serves a supporting function. This is an understandable direction, because he's a character who is already quite developed and familiar to most audiences. Everyone knows the Winter Soldier's story by heart. So just seeing him appear incredibly cool and continuing to guide the younger generation of heroes is enough to make the scenes memorable. Revisiting Bucky's lonely journey, Thunderbolts is perhaps the perfect haven for the reformed assassin to stand side by side with teammates in similar circumstances. However, looking to the future, the studio should gradually consider a fresher direction for this character. His storyline about joining the House of Representatives to try to integrate into everyday life hasn't really left an impression. In contrast to the two superheroes above, Taskmaster and Ghost, despite having many exploitable resources, are given too little screen time. I like the new costume and the beautiful techniques she demonstrates, and also how she transforms into a humorous person. However, this character's development motivation remains somewhat vague. Having her molecular disequilibrium cured by Janet in Ant-Man and the Wasp, we understand that Ava now has more trust in others, explaining her kind actions at the beginning of the film, but there's a feeling that this character still needs another decisive push to truly care for the Thunderbolts team. It's quite unfortunate that the film didn't choose to explore Bill Foster, who acts as Ava's foster father, a direction I consider quite promising. She's also directly responsible for the plot twist at the beginning of the film that I mentioned above. But this issue is only briefly touched upon, and we see she doesn't seem overly concerned or show remorse. Nevertheless, this is completely understandable, because the film already had to juggle too many characters, and perhaps Ava will be saved for future projects. However, there's one character that Thunderbolts didn't handle well: the boss Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, who in numerous previous Marvel works was portrayed as mysterious and scheming. In Thunderbolts, she's extremely passive. She even makes several elementary mistakes, such as why an important plan like eliminating assassins would be exposed to a strange agent, and even letting him see the CIA director's position. Couldn't she have a trusted driver, or why did she think she could easily kill Yelena, John Walker, Ghost, top-tier assassins of the world, with such a careless plan as at the beginning of the film? Fontaine's amateurishness makes the scenes where she appears superior to the Thunderbolts team or mimics Tony Stark's actions of standing at the bar offering drinks on top of the Avengers building quite funny, even foolish. Not to mention, I'm not sure why she would hire a secretary as immature and prone to information leaks as Mao, a character the film doesn't really need. Fortunately, we can temporarily overlook this inferior version of Nick Fury because Fontaine's role in the film isn't too prominent, and I think that's something you should do to fully enjoy the satisfaction in the final battle. That's right. After a second act with both good and bad points, Thunderbolts concluded with an emotional sequence that is one of the most well-rounded battles in recent MCU history. It's emotional, not just because of the visually and auditorily pleasing scenes, but also because director Jake Schreier delivered exactly what he promised at the beginning of the film. That is a battle against darkness in both literal and metaphorical senses. It's very difficult to talk about this sequence without spoiling the content. But you just need to understand that it's creatively staged, has clear intentions, and most importantly, highlights the message: anyone should speak up about their problems and open their hearts to accept help. Just as these anti-heroes, standing alone, are easily broken, but when fighting side by side, they perfectly compensate for each other's weaknesses. If it were any other Avenger, New York might not have been rescued. It had to be those with troubled pasts who were the key to neutralizing Sentry. By the time the ending came down, I was almost ready to forgive a significant number of plot holes that came before. And if you really need an example, I think Thunderbolts had an epic moment on par with the Guardians of the Galaxy holding hands with the Power Stone years ago. Speaking of fight scenes, it seems Chairman Kevin Feige has really listened to the fans' complaints. The film almost completely lacks the terrible CGI scenes we've seen before in Thor, Love and Thunder, or Captain America 4. Thunderbolts' visuals are given a polished treatment. The scenes where Ghost or Sentry display their powers are all artistically beautiful. Especially the film's dark tone also suits the story, and just the brief glimpses of the Red Room appearing in Yelena's mind are enough to be both frightening and memorable. In conclusion, Thunderbolts is a film worth watching, and the team's efforts are very commendable considering that apart from Bucky, all other members originally came from not-so-memorable MCU films. Being able to make these supporting characters interesting certainly comes from an invested screenplay. And although it can't be considered excellent or as distinctive as James Gunn's films, the passion is something all fans will appreciate. Thunderbolts is certainly one of Marvel's most meaningful films, and even more significant as it debuts at a time when the studio is trying to regain its spirit after a series of failures. I hope that with the current promising signals, we can witness a satisfying battle in the future with supervillain Doom. And those are Cinemata's impressions of the summer blockbuster from the planet's largest cinematic universe. What about you? Does Thunderbolts deserve the praise on review sites? Leave comments below so we can discuss. For now, goodbye and enjoy your movie watching.